Recording in progress. Welcome everyone to this session of Auravana with Travis and Elizabeth Grant. And I'm so happy that you all are here at Co-Creator Circle, because one of the feelings that I've always had, and I think many of you also do, that we not only affect our own life, but we also affect the lives of everyone around us. And that together we are actually co-creating this world. So I would like to introduce Travis and Elizabeth Grant to those of us who may not have met them before. I love that they have this beautiful vision, that they realize not only that the world is changing, but that they desire to participate in this constructive change. And like they say, that we work towards the emergence of community on this planet, so that we may all have the opportunity to participate in a living system that facilitates the fulfillment of all beings. A beautiful, beautiful message. And I think that's one of the things that drew me into it. Also, why I wanted to have you here, Travis and Elizabeth, is because I saw not only that you have this idea, but also that you have actually shown it. You have actually got such a beautiful plan together. So without further ado, over to you, Travis and Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, do you want to go first?
Hi, greetings, everyone. So I am Elizabeth. Travis and I, we are in Brazil at the moment. And we have been work to, develop like these standards and with architecture drawings also. So, yeah.
Thanks. So I've been working on the Auravana project for about 10 years. Elizabeth joined me about 2 years ago and has begun working on the architecture section, because the Auravana project essentially exists to envision and engineer the transition to a different configuration of society. So a lot of people over the decades.
Could everyone mute themselves, please? I'll have to see who is, because I'm not being able to mute someone. Give me a minute. Can you make out whose phone is?
But these ideas. So to continue on, Auravana has been in development for at least the last 10 years. But the idea is that Auravana has integrated and unified into an information system that would allow us to live on this planet in a more fulfilling manner together, without having markets, without having states, and without having socio-economic and competing classes, has been in the works for a long period of time. There have been many people who have spoken about this idea quite eloquently before, and have spoken about the problems with the configuration of society that we presently have. So Auravana essentially has developed a set of socio-technical standards. I'll give a little bit of a background before we go into the presentation about how I came to work on this project and the deliverables that the project has published and is continuing to work on. So I began thinking about how we could all live in a greater state of fulfillment together on this planet. And I initially thought that the way to bring more people to this realization that we have the potential on the planet right now to live this way was to develop an educational institution. So I began working on the structure of that educational institution, the organizational structure, and thinking about curriculum. Of course, the base of any educational institution or any education whatsoever is a set of documentation, an information set from which curriculum can be developed, and we can all learn about that system together and the operation of that system. So I began looking for the information out there, the documentation out there that would essentially explain to me this system that other people had spoken about for a long time, and I wanted to develop a platform to bring awareness to the world. And I found that the information wasn't out there. People had spoken about the concept in very vague terms. There were some principles, there was some basic information. There was a lot of discussion of transition, but there was very little discussion of the socio-technical operation of a system that would work well for all of humanity and would work without trade, would work without coercion, and would work without socioeconomic competing classes. So I took a step back, because how can you develop the educational platform for this type of system when you don't even have the documentation for this type of system? And again, all technical societies operate based upon this type of documentation. So any technological society requires to operate at scale, requires socio-technical documentation in order to operate. And that socio-technical documentation, those standards or policies, they have different names depending upon where you are or your professional context. If you're working with states, then they have policies and they have laws, and they have organizational documentation, they have constitutions, and all of this exists as and within standards. And so then you have the technical standards. Of course, those are produced by the ISO, the IEEE. A variety of different organizations out there produce technical standards. Everything from architecture, you have more simplistic standards like bioconstruction, to electrical engineering, to the integration of these systems and the interoperability of these systems. So I took a step back and began thinking about the configuration of a new type of society, a different type of society where we didn't have a lot of the problems and harmful incentives that we have today, and how would that work? And we eventually came up with the fact that, or the idea, the concept that all configurations of societies have four primary systems or societal system standards or socio-technical standards. They all have, and in a moment, we'll get to the VR system. Oh, do you want to see him? So we actually have a VR experience, and Elizabeth is putting on the VR headset right now. Here, let me unplug that. And then here, you can actually walk around in this VR. So Elizabeth can show us the models as we're talking, because in order to bring more, now that we've not sufficiently, because they are living documents and they will continue to be developed as long as humanity continues to more greatly understand itself and the world around it. But we can now give people both a visual experience of the concept of operation of this type of society in 2D and 3D in VR. But in the very near future, I think as we work together on this type of environment, because this type of environment, this type of society includes four systems, like every configuration of society, but the subsystems are configured differently depending upon the type of society you're describing. But the type of society we live in now is a market state. It has a market, it has trade, and it has states. And that type of society is a specific configuration of these four systems, a specific configuration of the social system, as Elizabeth is presenting here. Oh, you just need to keep your head a little bit more. There we go. A specific configuration of the social system, a specific configuration of the decision system. Every type of society has a decision system. And a lot of people sometimes get this confused, because when we're talking about economics, an economic system at a higher level is a decision system. It's simply decisioning about the acquisition and transformation into needed goods and services. The acquisition of resources and their transformation. We're talking about social decision. We're talking about material, because we live in a material, spatial, physical, object environment where we can interact, and that environment physically interacts with our vessels, our bodies. And then we talk about a lifestyle and the type of lifestyle that people have within this society. And again, this is a unified information system that feeds back on our life. We have a social direction. The social system is like a navigational system. So it has a direction, an orientation, and an approach. And all of that creates a set of data, knowledge, and values that feed into a decision system. And that decision system resolves to changes in the material environment. And our current, and see, what Elizabeth is showing you here is all of the different ways that we can represent this information system, but they're all the same. They all have the same fundamental systems. This is the a lot of people look at concept models, and unless they've had training in concept models, they become somewhat confused. The first concept model that I learned of was the TCP/IP protocol, and it's a very simple layered reference concept model of the protocol that basically organizes the entire internet. And so if you look up that model, you can see very simple concept model. And this concept model is the foundation of our internet. Now, we can do the same thing. We can model out the concept of operation of a different type of society, a society directed toward human need fulfillment, a society directed toward ecological regeneration, and a society oriented toward the optimized potential and fulfillment of every individual together on this planet. And we can do that first by identifying the top level systems and then engineering the design of those systems, thinking about how those systems could be configured in an optimal way to meet our intention, our goals, our objectives, and then our requirements. And from there, we contribute to habitat service teams that use common heritage resources and working groups that work on standards, because we're trying to remove Auravana project in part in order to develop this type of society has had to remove a lot of the market state conditioning and conditions that are ubiquitously present in our current society, and then many people think are just normal, common, natural, and yet are somewhat of an aberration when it comes to our human need fulfillment at a global and individual level. So the first thing we have had to do is we have had to model out the information systems. And there are many different ways to look at this model. And so Elizabeth has been showing front view, side views, breakout views, layered reference views, all different types of views on a similar information system. And this information system organizes our data and understanding about our reality, about ourselves, about our universe, and about the world we all live together within. So here we can see a breakdown of the model, a breakdown of the physical and informational model in 3D. At the top, we have the planet. Of course, you also have the solar system and the universe that we all live within and all live within this one planet. Then we have the unified societal standard. Now, I said that every configuration of society, whether it is the market state, which has a different description and explanation for its operation than a community configuration, is composed of 4 systems. But there are 2 other documents that essentially are necessary to fully explain the entire system. That would be an overview document, necessarily like an abstract document to any form of appropriate academic or scientific literature. And then we would have a project plan. Now, this project plan in community, because we're dealing with a unified information system and we're dealing with global resources that are held as the common heritage of all, requires some sort of project plans. Some people get concerned when we talk about this and they say, well, this is going to be restrictive on my freedoms in the village that I live in. But this project plan allows for freedom and flexibility and customization of habitats to the local population. So in that sense, it's actually creating a greater state of efficiency and freedom for individuals, because it allows individuals to live in customized habitats, and it accounts for that. The project plan for community also must include a transition, because we're transitioning from our current configuration of society. Some people refer to that as capitalism. More technical language is the market state, but whatever one chooses to refer to it as, to a community type configuration. Oh, love, can we go back to that model just a sec? I'm going to keep going down. Yes. And so then, of course, in order to reach our material, our actual material habitat service system, we have to take decisions. So all of these systems connect to a central pillar, that blue, turquoise blue central pillar. Oh, could you a bit more still? Yeah, but a bit more still. There's a bit shaky. Thank you, love. And so the next, excellent. So this is the decision system. So the decision, a lot of people, when they begin looking at the standards, they tend to skip the decision system. But the decision system is extremely important to answer many questions people have about how this configuration of society is resolved. Many people say, how does the economy work? And then, there's an entire system that describes that, but they skip that system because it doesn't use the word economic in the title. Instead, it uses the word decision. So the way in which we arrive at decisions, the way at which we arrive at solutions, through decisioning is through a process of socialist economic calculation and a parallel inquiry process that includes habitat service team members, includes essentially work in this configuration of society, and work in this configuration of society removes a lot of, as I was speaking of before, removes a lot of the abstractions from the market state. And so you have individuals on habitat teams working in habitats, and you have working groups working on information, maybe discovering new knowledge, or working on the standards themselves, or working on the application of those standards to the material environment. And then habitat service team members operating in the material environment, like we have habitat service team members operating now. We just use different role identifiers and role names. We have the plumber, we have the manufacturer, we have the medical technician. All of these are simply in a community configuration of society, habitat service team members operating in a habitat or maybe operating between habitats. And then you have working group members, like you have working group members now who professionally work on standards at the state and corporate or commercial levels. And so here we have a decision system. And so this decision system is important. It includes economic calculation, a specific type of economic calculation, not market economic calculation. It includes socialist economic calculation, essentially, which if you look up, the two primary mathematicians are Leontief and Kantorovich, who essentially developed this type of mathematics. And so we go from decisioning down to the three layers of the habitat service system with the map underneath, with that site map underneath, essentially the color model of the city underneath. And so these are the three habitat service systems in a community configuration of society. And these habitat service systems are linked to human needs. So the first one is life support. These are categories of human needs, and these categories are required in order to run the economic calculation, which is above. And then, of course, you have the social system above that, which basically provides the requirement, objectives, and necessary deliverables, tasks for project management or rename project coordination requires. So these three have services: life support, then technology support, and then exploratory support. And then for each of those systems, you have subsystems. Those subsystems are not only exist at an information system level, but also a habitat level. People are working in the habitat on water operations, are working in the habitat on architectural operations, on medical operations, on life support operations, subsystems. And sometimes they're working specifically on that system, and sometimes they're working as part of an intersystem team, a habitat intersystem team. The priority for that often is there's an incident, then the habitat service team members come together, although in other operations, they're intersystems as well. Love, let's go to the center and let me just explain, the concept at a high level. One of the most important things that one needs to know to kind of understand what we're describing here. Go ahead a little bit more further in. Right, let's look at this model. So again, talking about concept models, a lot of this people dismiss because they say, oh, it's very conceptual, it's theoretical, it's not practical. So I'd first like to address that, because that's
I think you got muted, Travis.
Oh, thank you. I'm unmuted now. So anything that we're going to bring about at any sort of complexity scale, we first need to model out first, especially if we're working with a society, because there are a lot of risks. Obviously, there are a lot of things that could be unsafe for people. So modeling it out first at a conceptual level before even considering transition is important. A lot of transition actions and proposals in the past have failed because there wasn't the engineered vision. Like if you're building a house, in fact, we're building architecture, we're building behaviors, we're building so many things in this new environment that it's important to model it out first. Simply, if we look at the past and attempts at transition that have happened in the past and have failed quite spectacularly. So the first thing we do is we look and we explain what a concept model is.
On a long, cold, lonely night.
Excuse
Just
me.
a minute, please. Yeah, okay, I'm just going to do, please don't let anyone else in.
Okay.
Have you been?
Yes, I let some people in.
Please don't let anyone else in.
Oh, you've been putting them in the waiting room, I see.
Yeah, no,
okay.
I've been removing them and they keep coming back and different names. Please let no one else in. Thanks.
I'll do that. Yeah. Excellent. So, so we can all essentially look at, recognize, and come to a greater understanding together, essentially an alignment, maybe in operation, an agreement of a model that works well for all of us. A model that we can use to help facilitate the fulfillment of all of us, and into which we put information and we integrate information, and out of which comes a better life for us as individuals and us together in a community configuration of society. So one other thing that I need to clear up here using the term community, when people use the word community, most people in modern society, they're referring to something much different, or at least somewhat different than what we in the Auravana project and how we use the term community. We're specifically referring to a configuration of society. I think people imagine that. Imagine all the amazing things that this sort of configuration of society gives them at a smaller scale, maybe in their activity groups, or maybe in the eco-village they live in, or maybe in their family. But at the Auravana project, when we use the word community, we're actually referring to a configuration of society, not all these other things that have those good feelings and have that sense of community, but are not actually community in the way that we use that language, because the way that we use that language, it refers to a configuration of society. So it would be technically incorrect when people refer to their racial communities or their meetup group communities, or, there are all these other communities. That's fine. They can refer to them, but in the technical documentation, right, we are referring to a specific configuration of society. So we do differentiate that. No problem to refer to all those things that people love, as community. But in the documentation, it just needs to be clarified that when we're using the word community, we're referring to a specific configuration, and not the configuration right now that people have those other communities. So this is just an important point. So again, what we're doing is we're transitioning from a specific configuration of society, a market to state type. And this is why it's so important to get these terms right, to a different configuration of society, because sometimes it obfuscates when people use the word community to refer all these other great things that they love and are wonderful for their well-being. And they use the word community to refer to what all those great things are, not at just their individual or familial or just a small group level, to refer to the configuration of an entire type of society. It sort of diminishes it, and it can lead to an initial difficulty understanding. Then again, it can also help when people see the similarities. So here we have another configuration of the habitat. This is more of a here we go. So this is more of a market state configuration of a habitat, love. So where we have the economic national security state. So this is a contrast. This is a market state view of the habitat, or of partial habitat. Let's stay on the left and I can just show this. It represents a different configuration of society. You have states that have their own economic security system. Sometimes those states enter into unions and then they have their own economic security. You have the bureaucratic system that runs and coerces behaviors within that system. And then you have the operation of life support, because every configuration of society has to have some sort of life support. And you have protection of the system, and then protection of the ideology in life support, because that's connected with people's lives and their well-being and their ability to even live if they don't go into a state of poverty. But you have to also have the other ones, which are common to, which are obviously common to community too, like energy and power production, or architecture, or medical, or recycling and waste management. So, and then of course you have resource flows between life support and then between the bureaucratic system, and then between the national economic state. So you can see the inefficiencies. And so this model you sort of sees gaps. There are gaps in the flow of resources for all the waste that occurs in the market state. So here's a more of a community configuration. We have a 3D world up at the top, and that's our biosphere that we all live or could live in harmony together with. And then you can see the cities, I think, in this. You can see the cities, these integrated city systems. Some people refer to these as total city systems. Again, dealing with terminology, the terminology that people use today in the market state is somewhat different than the technical terminology we use in the documentation. The technical terminology for these eco-villages, these towns, these population centers, these cities, they all are AKAs of also known as habitat service system. So they are essentially service systems where we have our needs for life support, technology support, and exploratory met at as local a level as possible. But we also have a network of these habitat service systems where we share access to global resources to meet our individual needs for life, technology, and exploratory support. There are different ways to show this model. This is a one layered reference model. This is another breakout model. And so you can see the different subsystems. Then you can also see the operational processes. There are 3 primary operational processes here. The 3 primary are strategic, and then operations, and then incident or emergency. But there are actually 5 levels of operational process. And if in life support, you look at the different colors there. First, you see emergency, or that's like a serious incident. Then you have, say, critical, and then recovery, and then maintenance and operations, and then strategic preservation planning, or planning of these customized habitats, because these are master planned habitats. They are habitats that, and they can be customized in the future. Different habitats will have potentially different times for their updating or their modification. And those are typically done in zones, whereas some zones are more fixed in the habitat, and other zones are like a cultivation or an aesthetic part of the habitat might be updated by the local population of the habitat more regularly. So this is one version of a habitat that we have been working on. Now, I just have to mention all of the other projects working out there on our common direction. And because we're currently looking at the material system and these master site plans for the habitat, I'll mention some of the other projects out there who are noteworthy and have done great work and are still doing great work. First is the Venus Project, who has helped our direction become so widely known, and have done great work in facilitating an understanding of this direction, and also their architecture. So Jacques Fresco, Roxanne Meadows, and all others who have been working at the Venus Project. Then we have One Community, and One Community has been doing an excellent job. One Community Global has been doing an excellent job of master planning, open source and free duplicable share, low tech, mostly bioconstruction, but also using some modern technology, eco-villages. And all of those are available on their website. This is architecture that Elizabeth and me, to a lesser extent, has been working on. And so this is done in AutoCAD and Revit. And so this is one configuration of a rural environment. And this rural environment is about 10 hectares. This rural environment is primarily primarily dedicated to a type of agriculture known as restoration agriculture, regenerative agriculture, has syntropic agriculture, has permaculture, has many names known to it, but sometimes permaculture doesn't include animals. This does include animals. And so there's a rotation of animals in a silvopasture type environment. This is all described in the current material system. The next version of which will be even more greatly updated. So the current material system is divided into two systems. There are 4 system standards, social, and I'll repeat this so that we kind of, because it's good to repeat some of this information. Social, decision, material, lifestyle. The material system, just like the project plan, has grown so large that we had to separate it into 2 systems, the material system and a habitat service system. The habitat service system describes and explains the habitat. And so one of the habitat service systems is architecture and another is cultivation. These are service systems in the habitat. Love, it's, oh, she's sorry, she's just taking it off. It's hurting her eyes, but she's putting it back on. And so, yeah, so restoration agriculture, essentially. Some habitats might be more technologically advanced and use more technology in their cultivation system, but it's possible for all habitats to some degree to include restorative agriculture practices that include plants, animals, fungi, a natural ecology. You okay, love? Oh, she's a bit. So what happens with VR for a lot of people is it can get a bit, should we change this? Do you want me to? No? Okay. Here, I can do this and I can walk around like this. So yeah, I understand. So Elizabeth, do you want to talk about this? Here, I'll walk around and direct us to the first habitat that we have been working on, this rural, primarily restorative agriculture habitat. It's really just one version of habitat. We can begin networking these and working within these as we would work in community, in working groups and in habitat service teams. So I'll turn it over to Elizabeth, who's been working on this project, this sub-project, because there are many different configurations of habitat in community, and so Elizabeth can talk about this configuration. See, and I'll direct us to the images.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just stopped it to walk with VR because it can be for me it can be like challenge sometimes, like too much information and like I don't know. So yeah. In terms of the habitat configuration, today we have like 2 configuration. One like high tech, like the Travis is showing to us. So in this habitat, we have around 8-9 houses. And we have 2 types. We have like a big house with around 700 square meters with 2 floors. And we have like a small one with around 200 square meters, just 1 floor, this type 1. And in this habitat, we have like some, major proposals like to agroforest, biodigester, banana circuit, just like to, in terms of saneamento básico, basic sanitation, yeah. And we have like composting, and so the intention is like to create self-sufficient habitats where we can test like these standards in one like prototype. So we are in this moment to calculate like small scale to in some point in time to really calculate like a cities. So we are in this stage. And what more? We have like this indigenous configuration. Yeah, this is like a low-tech proposal. This was inspired in like a Crow village. I want like this opportunity and recommend. Yesterday we post the first mini documentary when we explain this proposal. This is inspired in the Crow village, one indigenous tribe here in Brazil. They organize this themselves with like circular way like this, and we are proposing sustainable habitat. Travis and I, we visited in May this year, and they are living like in poverty and like really, bad conditions. So we have like some proposal to improve the way they live today. So this is like one inspiration.
Can you talk about some of the big, because there are, can I have the,
Yeah, sure. Maybe I can come back to the VR and you.
are you sure?
Yeah, I think I am. I
Okay,
recovered a bit.
okay, here, let's. Now we're going to look at, as Elizabeth has been saying, we have different in community, not only us, but other people as well are working on these different configurations of a habitat service system. And we can network these habitat service systems. And within the network, we can share resources and access to global human fulfillment. So there are, Elizabeth has shown you some of the ones we've been working on. There have been other people like Jacques Fresco, who, if we look to just behind you and to your right, love. Yeah, right there at this city. Yep. So this one was inspired by Jacques Fresco, and this was created in a simulation engine. And this is an entire city separated into different zones. Like we currently have the market state material environment separated into zones, but you see the zoning here is slightly different. Here you have dwellings, you do have production, maker, workspaces, you have high density dwellings, low density dwellings, you have recreation, all within the perimeter of the habitat. And even within the perimeter, in this circular configuration, the outer circular around here is a restorative cultivation belt where we rotate animals within a silvopasture agroforestry environment, producing an abundance of food, fuel, and fiber. When Elizabeth's talking about that other configuration, that the rural configuration that you saw, not the indigenous configuration, although that too, but the other rural configuration. These configurations are designed because what can we produce an abundance of through restorative agriculture? We can produce an abundance of food, fuel, and fiber. Of course, modern society requires mining, requires minerals, requires a lot of other materials that you don't want to conduct the operations of within the perimeter of the habitat. So that would be done outside the perimeter of the habitat, but would still be part of the operation and maintenance and even incidents and strategic preservation part of our habitat. So you can network these as Elizabeth was showing in some of these other models. And so in this network, you can actually have the animals circulating around all of this land, helping to restore the soil. It's one of the most efficient ways of restoring and recuperating soil is mixing agroforestry techniques with the rotation, the appropriate grazing and not overgrazing of animals, and redoing the terrain of the environment in order to make it hold and infiltrate water more effectively. So this, and you can see here on the planet, on the Earth, we can begin creating these environments based upon a unified information standard around the world, because everything is open source and free shared, exactly like one community is doing. And one community is developing these sort of lower tech systems. So if we go back to the center, love, can we go back to the center where I'd like to introduce people to the two concepts that one really needs to be aware of in order to understand this direction. Yes, so we have an information system, and then we have a material environment in which we live. And that information system can align more greatly with the reality of our material environment and align more greatly with our knowledge of what creates a more fulfilled individual and more social environment or less. So the two primary, if you're looking at it from a reality perspective, like a axiomatic perspective, there is information. And so we have a rope here with two threads. One of the threads is information, and the other thread is materiality. I don't think anybody would deny that we're in material bodies and we have material needs, and we interface with us through some sort of spatial environment, and that we're conscious beings, and that information is an axiom as well. So we have information concepts, and those concepts form meanings in our mind. And then we have materiality. So in modeling these, we have concept models, a concept taxonomy, and you can see here a 3D visualization of a concept model. And then over to the right, we have object models. And Yep. And then to the right, yeah, just a little, we have here an object model of a part of a train. So the power part of the train. So yeah, we have object models, and these object models can be exploded, and then you can focus down deeper and deeper into, you know, the elements that compose any individual object, and then you can explode. You can go to a higher, a more aggregate level, and then you have the actual object itself. In this case, a train. So then over here we have on the left-hand side, we have decisioning, and this is a model conveyed in the decision system, and this is part of economic calculation and parallel inquiry. And so you have tables and matrices which are calculated based upon human requirements, objectives, and access to resources, and then production of resources in a manner that's most efficient and uses those resources with the least amount of waste. So that decision system here, you can see on this 3D model of the real world community information systems model. And you can see that matrix on the right integrating with the decision system. And then if we were to look at this like a flow model, that blue flows into the green, that green flows into our lifestyle, and that lifestyle flows into our social information system and our own ways in which we perceive the world around us, and are then capable of navigating either to each of our benefit or to each of our detriment in the real world. So if we look to the left, love, if we, so this is, again, all of this can be represented in different ways. Some people get one way of the representation of the system more quickly than another way of the representation. So here, that model on the right there of the two models of the high level organizational structure of community. First, you have a map essentially, because what does everything require before you build anything on land or on landscape? It requires a map. So we have the map, and then we have the information system, like the geographical, geospatial, and conceptual information system underlying this. This is just a high level, ideal model. And then to the right, we have the right model. We have another version of the real world community model right there. Yeah, and this is just a different way of perceiving the real world community model. They represent the same information, but from slightly different views. It's like when you're in a modeling program and you look at the same model from a different perspective. So again, what is our goal here? What can we accomplish if we work together? And then I'll open it up to questions, and we can take you around if you'd like for a second. So the frames per second can sometimes make people a little bit upset. You can actually download this model, this VR, if you have an Oculus Rift, and put this VR experience on your Oculus Rift at a lower setting because it's been exported from Unreal Engine. But if you'd like the game files or the files themselves, just ask us and we can send it to you, and then you can run it in Unreal Engine and then experience this for yourself. So I guess, what else? I think, I'll just talk a little bit to the fact that, it matters what we do on a daily basis, whether or not we will see a planet with less poverty and a greater flourishing and flow in individuals' lives in the near term. And it really does matter what we do on an individual basis daily, but it also matters, it matters whether or not we work daily on this direction, and it matters what we do. I can't tell you the number of projects I regularly meet, and they're working on this direction, but they haven't developed the standards, or they don't have any documentation. And that's been a big, it's been a big sort of issue for me, at least, because I understand that in order to develop something like this, we have to have the documentation. And there are projects out there working on this documentation. There are many projects that start that aren't working on this documentation. And if we could work on this documentation together, if we could work together as a group on this direction, things would advance so much more quickly. And just remember, the way in which we work in community is on working groups and locally on habitat teams. It's not that difficult. And so if we're not working together, at least on working groups, or at least making our content available so that other working groups, whether they be scientific, academic, or and projects like ours, then maybe our direction is a little bit farther away. People sort of ask me, you know, when do you think there's a lot of content on Auravana. So we have all of the standards that you see, and then we have more than 1,800 models that describe the concept of operation of this type of system. We have a lot of stuff. How long will it take for us to begin living, even at a local level, in this type of society? At a local level, we can begin living in a transition type society within like 2 to 3 years with sufficient funding and a little bit more development behind us in terms of the material system. And then we also need to begin working on the economic calculation software system and logistics system. If we don't begin, and that's at a local level, when will we transition within the region of a state or at the state or union level of states? That's probably anywhere from 50 to 200 years away, I would estimate. With the way that I see people working right now, starting projects and then not having the documentation and then not working on projects and then it just being very difficult to work, right now I see it as 50 to 200 years away. So that's, again, my opinion. That's just my opinion. Elizabeth, how long do you think it might take us to begin transitioning and living in this type of configuration of society, this community type configuration?
So it depends. For me, the point is like we need help people to be aware in terms of this proposal. So we have, the big work is like to share and like to communicate with people. With that, we can, sometimes I am more positive. So I think with a lot of people and organize it, of course, we can like transition quickly, because we have so many information and we have the condition for that. But again, we need like organization and like, I don't know. Sometimes I think
politics. Do you want to talk about politics?
Yeah, I think the politics is important here, because with like politics, we can expand and like shortly we can have like a large scale with implementing this proposal. But yeah, so I don't know, with like the right politics and with the right people, with the right documentation and the power, we can transition in, I don't know, 50 years or more or less. I don't know. I definitely don't know. Depends, what we are doing today.
Yeah, it depends upon what we are doing today. There is a transition plan in the project execution document, which is the project plan became so large it was separated into 2 documents. And so the project execution essentially includes a transition plan. That transition plan includes like a transition of the mass population, the consciousness and awareness of the mass population. It also includes a transition of the market, and it includes a transition of the state. It includes what we might need to amplify, what we might need to reduce, and the strategies to get from where we currently are to where we will be. This is the first version of this document. So this document is, you could consider it draft, although it has been published. But I would look at it as a draft document just in the initial stages. So again, and it's also a highly real-time living, it will be in the future, because we're dealing with situations and the application of this new way of living to different situations and the transition of those different situations. Some people have more of a condition to transition to this way of living, and some people, because of their environments, have less of a condition. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think we can. I would like to ask you all, how was like this presentation with this VR presentation online? Is our first experiment with that, and we would like, would like the feedback
and any questions, if you have questions, and we can show you around the VR experience a little bit more. Again, in the future, we'll have a simulation, or some organization will out there will have a simulation of the material environment, which necessarily includes the information experience of living in one of these habitat service systems, maybe a city, maybe a low tech. Some people are imagining at first just having a room, and in that room you have you have access via, a screen to viewing other parts of the habitat and interfacing with the information systems and information flows of the habitat. But in the future, at some point in time, we will have a full-on virtual reality experience simulating one of these habitats or eventually a network of habitats. And that, I think, will bring a greater awareness to our direction than anything else, because it'll give people a firsthand experience. We're also thinking about starting up an educational platform, because this documentation is, it is a completely different way of viewing society than the way we have been programmed, both programming of ourselves and others programming us, and the way this programming is reinforced in modern society. So the information can be very dense at times, but it doesn't, there are visualizations for almost everything. A lot of people forget that there are models that visualize almost everything, and you can go on the website and type in the name of those models or the name, a concept, and you can search for that. Just remember that on the website, there are two search boxes. One of them searches the models and the other searches the whole website. So just be aware of the two search boxes on some of the pages. So I'd like to open it up to questions, and maybe we'll take you around the VR experience if any of the models answer your question.
Or comments in general, we are here.
I think I would thank you so much, Travis and Elizabeth. This was really, I think it was very dense, lots and lots of information. And I feel that the question that you had, Elizabeth, I know you posed two, but the one that I would really like to start with, if everybody is willing to come on video and audio, is when do you feel this transition can take place? I think both Travis and Elizabeth spoke about that. And one of the things that I have in my mind is, because when I was sharing this with people, people have, all of us, even me, I think of it, do I even like living in a physical gated community? How comfortable do I feel with living in community? And I think this is really the crux of it. How comfortable are human beings with being together, with being able to communicate with one another? But what I like is that in what you have shown, there's a way of being together, and yet, like you were saying, Travis, that you could also be a little separate. I know Maria is writing a few things. I would love it if you came and spoke them, Maria. Would you like to? And Sherry also. Yeah, please, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, of course. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if you can hear me.
We can.
Oh, yes. And
we can hear you.
Too? Okay.
Yes.
But anyways, thank you so much. Yes, I was thinking, a lot about how we are definitely in a transition. Not a lot of people are not aware of this, but I feel, in tagging along from what Meenakshi was saying, that once we really face the big problems, a lot of people are going to rush in. So it's like what you guys have is really very futuristic. For some, it's possibly like super futuristic, but it's definitely where we're going to have to head towards too, because of what's going on. And I feel when we are in a situation that we really are facing the problems, like food shortages or water shortage, or then it's going to move us very quickly towards finding some solutions. I feel the information was a lot also. I will look into it, because I know you have it. But for me, it's like the first take in of the information, and then I have to review it and read it, and then things start to click and kind of assimilate it, but really, wow, congratulations. I know, like I was saying, the Transition Town movement is a movement that I've been following for a long time. And what they do, I don't know if you're familiar with them, you might be. is kind of organizing with the resources that we already have in the community. So if someone has a bigger garden, like Menachi, for example, we can have that to be our food source, one of our food source, to have a garden and things like that, no? Which is starting with what we have and kind of organize with what we have already. So I feel, to answer the question, is that we might transition into something like that first, you know, and that we might even see it in our lifetime, for sure. Like we use the resources that we have, we start like the base model. And when we start living in that way, we're also realistically going to know exactly what we face. Because right now we can predict, okay, how we're gonna go around having boundaries with each other and have our privacy and share our common areas or whatever. But when we do it, we're gonna actually know from experience what we faced, you know, what challenges we faced. And because everything is changing so rapidly, then a bigger model for us, like an eagle view model, like is what I feel you guys have, will eventually take place in a bigger, broader scale. And then government people can start like strategizing by being informed in this way. I think it's important that this gets to the people that are also making those decisions that are broader, bigger impact, like people that are designing cities and so forth, no? But for sure, we'll start transitioning to moving into this direction. And I think it's gonna be maybe 100 years. But first, we'll take some other steps before we finalize getting that. Another project that is very interesting is the one in Florida, the Venus project. He also had a very interesting proposal. So let's see what steps we can take now to build upon this new way we all have to embrace. Thank you so much.
I saw that Sherry had also written something in the chat. Sherry, would you like to come on?
Sure. It's a question. I've been sharing your model with other people, and the first question I always get from people, and I'm not very good at answering it, so I would love to hear how you answer it, is if it's a resource-based economy, then how are goods and services exchanged, and how do you, how do you get things made and manufactured? And my answer is not satisfactory for some people. So I'd like to hear how you respond to that.
Okay, so the first, let me take some notes. The first term you used is resource-based economy. That's not how I classify this configuration of society. It is a subclassification of this configuration of society. The Venus Project, one of those other amazing projects out there, popularized this term because that's the primary term Jacques Fresco used to refer to the sort of society that he was describing. He also said you could call it an access-based economy. Again, an economy is a subsystem of the decision system, and we are, if we're looking at this from a systems level perspective, you could classify the economy in more ways than just resource based. And in fact, you have to, and the decision system does that. It's not only resource based, it's access based, it's systems based, because in the social system, we have a primary approach, the systems methodology, and then it's participatory based. Now, so we're just talking about the term resource based economy. That confuses a lot of people because every economy is resource-based, right? In fact, TVP, the Venus Project, tried to trademark that term, and the United States government said that's too common of a term, you can't trademark that term. So we're first not just talking about an economy that's resource-based. As soon as you use that, market economists don't really, most people won't understand what we're describing if you use that term. Again, we're referring to a specific configuration of society with a specific configuration of 4 primary systems. And the operation of this society, how we get our needs met, can only be understood in its entirety if one understands these 4 systems, especially somebody who has been brought up in this market state society. So first of all, there's the term resource-based economy, which can lead to a confusion. The best thing to talk about in terms of economy is just to give the simple definition of economy, which is agnostic of the market and agnostic of how the way resources are distributed and accessed in the community configuration of society. So an economy is just the acquisition and transformation of resources into needed goods and services. And a community type configuration, needs are categorized in economic calculation, and needs are accounted for throughout the whole system, from the social system to decisioning, where they become requirements, to the material system, where they become habitat services. So you have a different approach, so in a community type configuration, you have a social organization that is similarly unified because they have a similar set of understandings and a similar set of objectives, values, and those understandings include needs, and those needs become requirements, those values become objectives in decisioning. You can see how a market state economist could begin getting confused here, because it is a very different way of organizing society. And in order to get to this new organization, there is obviously the requirement for a transition. It is a different configuration. Needs are met through a different information system and a different material environment. So in the market state, you have wants. And you want something and you can either afford it and you can purchase it, or you can't afford it and you can't purchase it. In community, there aren't really wants. There are preferences in terms of wants. You have categories of needs, which economic calculation can be done on. And then you have solutions that incorporate those need analyses and final design solution that meet those needs. And within there's customization. That customization is referred to as preference. This is discussed in the decision system. So there aren't really wants. There are needs, and then there are preferences. So again, a market economist will have a very difficult time with all of this. How do we get anything in modern society? We have a social organization, we have decisionings, and then we have a materialization service known as production or manufacturing that produces the objects essentially that are located in cities, towns, villages, population centers that we refer to as technology and the various services. So you can see how complex this can get, because if you want to understand the actual operation of the system, one has to understand the operation of this new configuration of society, and that can sometimes take time. Now, how do people get access to, now I'll just answer simply, how do people in a community type configuration of society get access to those objects that fulfill their needs and preferences? So let's just imagine that there was no market state and we're all living in a habitat service. We're all living in a community type configuration, a habitat service system. You're living in a habitat, I'm living in a we're all living in a habitats, and resources are shared around those habitats. You then have a habitat service system team that is responsible for master planning that habitat. And that that's primarily working groups, although it's made up of also people working in that habitat on habitat teams. Those people working in habitat teams would be the type of people that construct our houses, that maintain parts of our infrastructure, that do various operations in our cities, the same type of people, except it's the category name team members. So we have people working physically maintaining, constructing things, doing things, a while too, if they're doing mining operations away from our habitats. And then people working in working groups, and some of the people working groups are working on the master plan for that local habitat. And some of those belonging working groups working on regional economic distinction plans, again, discussed.
Lost you.
Yeah, it's got frozen. Maybe they can hear, and maybe it's, if you can stop the sharing, your bandwidth will be improved. So I think, yeah, they'll come back.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah, thank you. That, it's more complex than I was making it out to be, clearly.
Travis, you're on mute somehow.
Yes, it's simplex. To actually, so when I say simple, you can describe it simply. There are habitat service teams and there are working group members, and those people contribute to the operation of a network of habitat services in which resources are held as the common good and solutions are calculated in conjunction with an economic calculation system, programmatic, algorithmic economic calculation system, and local populations. And we have technology just like we have now, except it's applied directly toward human need fulfillment without all of the abstractions present in the market state. And the people living in a community type society have a specific information set that they perceive reality with, and that facilitates navigation together and the taking and resolving of decisions together that are aligned with our highest state of fulfillment. That's very simple. But then if you begin talking about the complex, where can we put, if you begin then talking about the complex operation, then somebody has to do some, some actual work themselves, which can be very difficult now after people go through the schooling system to bring themselves up to speed on a complex topic. That can sometimes be challenging, and it is challenging to understand this without somebody helping another. Sometimes I think of how easy this is, but it's also so complex. It took years in order to develop this documentation, so it can take a long, it took me a long time to understand. It took decade to really fully come to a unified information system and an understanding how we could all live this way. So it's simplex. And you can visualize it like, somewhat simply too. Again, the best way to understand it will be in the future when we have a VR experience and we can give people that VR experience. Right now, it's just having somebody explain it to you and then you going off and thinking, and then someone going off and thinking for a long time or reading a large part of the documentation or spending time mentating on the models. So
no, I can try complement Travis in this sense in terms of production. I think the point is with Auravana proposes about the values, because all society is based upon work. The workers produces everything in terms of like the profit today. So when we understand our values, when we have like the orientation, the workers will still producing, but like toward our direction to meet our needs. So yeah, I think.
Yeah, values are very important in this, which is why they were actually the first part of the entire standard was my work on values and basically coming to a greater understanding of what values would orient us, because values in a social system, social conscious information system, essentially orient all of our decisions. And then in the decision system, those values become objectives, and then they become operationalized in the material system.
Yeah, no, I would like to ask Sherry if it's like a bit clear.
Yes, it is. It's much more clear. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We can open up the chat.
Okay.
I would like to comment something. Maria, is it possible, just imagining, to have also, because it's really very important documentation that you have, what do you say if there's like a storytelling of this future society already in place, and kind of maybe that will make it easier because you two understand this whole big picture, because you had to digest it, do all the research and put it all together. So maybe some type of storytelling, like for kids, like, okay, welcome to Arville. This is the year 2050. And let us present you the families here, a local family in Arville, something like that, you know, and kind of the mother, she works at doing this and that and that, and it's voting time, and we're, you know, something of that nature could be very interesting. And because using our imagination could really kind of make us understand how would this look in, like, in the everyday, where, well, Mrs. Ford, she goes to buy her food every morning at blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, kind of like that. Have you thought of that?
Yes, I've done a lot of thinking of it, Elizabeth. Yeah, I've done a lot of thinking. And in fact, Auravana project was in part developed by looking at these, you know, fictional stories about how we could live in a better future. On the website, under similar organizations, there are a series of other, I would say, nonfiction. Some of them are, yeah, you just have to be careful with them, I guess, some of those stories, but there are a series of stories there that have been written by people in the past that somewhat describe this way of living. Again, the virtual reality is just one potential. Stories like you are describing are so important. They really are working as an working to enter the worldbuilding.ai competition, which was a recent artificial intelligence competition. And so we completed those stories in relation to that, but they're just short and they're more contextual in terms of that competition. But yes, we need more of these stories, these positive stories about how we can live together, and even maybe dramatic or actionable. These stories about how we can live together in this way. You know, now or in the future. And so I would love to see more of these stories. And if anybody wants to contact us and they want to write a story, you know, we'd definitely help them kind of think through some of this. It's important. So, and any short stories that people want to include within the lifestyle system that do in fact describe the operation of this new way of living or the transition to this new way of living, those would go in the lifestyle system standard.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Travis, you know, and Maria, thank you for bringing that up, the story. In fact, it's not only going to help us to visualize, but I feel that it can also bring the timeline forward. Not only that, it'll also help us to realize how many people may already be living a version of that. Not only as a transition, but maybe it's there and we can't see it yet, because it's so far away. It's so separate from the way that we are normally living in our world. So yeah, I think that's fantastic.
And I'm feeling it will be you writing it.
Well, I was feeling that too. I was actually going to bring it into the Rainbow Child and into Gaia is Stirring.
Yes, you and Travis also, and Elizabeth, like in a way, like if you're writing it to your grandkids or something like that, because it is very, very valuable, you know, and it will bring it like down to, like, storytelling is very powerful, and visioning, you know, it can bring it down to, like, it's like digesting all of this like a grandmother or a grandfather, and just making it easy for us to digest in this way, you know, it will take us on that journey. And so taking these very complex ideas into what it would really is, how it's going to be, because it's going to happen, you know, this is going to happen. This is, you're so inspired and so determined, both of you, and so aligned with so much integrity and putting all this effort and bringing this vision, because you're being guided, because this is needed and this will need to happen. It's already happened, basically. So But for a lot of the common people, a lot of us, and I include myself, even though I have been doing research and I'm interested, and it's still complex for me. So imagine people that haven't even considered this. So I think, and then it can take us into dreaming that whole new world into being, which is the whole shamanic path of the Munaiki that I share. So we can all start dreaming and seeing ourselves like, oh yeah, this could be. So that's more or less what I feel. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
The inspirational part, like,
Yeah.
the dreaming this into reality.
There's also people already who have thought of it in different ways, like you said, but also I know Barbara Marx Hubbard and some people here were from there who had spoken about SynCon, a way of living together. It hasn't grown yet because it's to do with how people were talking about whether people can actually work together. We can have so many people with ideas, but will they be able to, at that high level, still be able to communicate or not? Or does each one want their idea to be, the first one or the only one? And the second one is the World United, with which I'm involved right now. And they've also thought of 15 wings in which we can communicate, in which we live, all the way from governance to spirituality and politics and economics and everything. And they have also got a plan, but I feel that their plan is intellectual and thought, in thought and in consciousness, but yours along with it shows how it can actually manifest, how physically it can come into being. So I really love that that you have shown today, Travis and Elizabeth. And my only thing that I felt is that in your presentation, it is true. It's what Maria said. There's so much information. It takes time to absorb it. I think Steve has unmuted his mic. Maybe he wants to say something.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for coming so late. I hope I get to watch a replay of this later. But just wanted to check and see if anyone had already brought up the there are videos on YouTube that I've watched showing how certain people have transformed deserts into blooming paradises, right? I don't know if you already covered that in your presentation.
Yes, I think that would be Joel Salatin, who's the most famous for that. There are we did in fact, in terms of there are many names for what you're referring to. The one I prefer is holistic cultivation, but there's also restoration agriculture, restorative agriculture, syntropy farming, permaculture with animals. And so yes, that is a part of our design. It is a current part of our design. It's located within the Habitat Service Standard, which is a subsystem of the material standard under the cultivation section. It's reasonably complete. The next version will be more complete. But yes, most of the habitats include the restoration of soil in the context of producing abundance of what those sorts of systems can produce on a savannas, agroforestry, animal integrated type landscape, a restoration of soil, and a production of an abundance of food, fuel, and fiber.
Got it. I'm so happy to hear that. What I wanted to point out is that our modern media make a lot of money by attracting attention, and people are fascinated with negative things. So we constantly hear about the environment, and there are severe environmental issues, don't get me wrong, but there are hundreds, maybe thousands of spots around the world where the soil has been restored, where man-made deserts were turned into man-made or natural paradises, and they don't get much airtime. So I just want to say that I really do think this whole concept is taking off. It's just happening very quietly in bits and pieces.
I was also thinking, Steve, that which we've been talking a little earlier, that there are countries in the world where people may be living like that. Like Raghav is right now in Serbia, and he tells me how people live there, you know, in the smaller towns and in the villages. It's so different from how we perceive the today's world to be, if we are just living in these highly civilized nations, which are, it's civilized, but it's also very traditional. So I think everything that we have, I'm really looking to getting it in different languages, because it's not only going to be in English, it's going to be in so many different ways that we are going to be able to communicate. And I think all these ways will bring what you have dreamed and planned and organized to come even earlier.
Mm.
That has been one challenge for our direction as a whole, the fact that we do speak different languages on this planet. And so we currently have the system overview in English and Portuguese. We will be translating it, thanks to other people on this call, into Spanish, the system overview into Spanish at first. It is not very easy to just you do need a translator to translate these documents. We can't, at the moment, we don't know of any AI software that can sufficiently translate these technical documents. There are a lot of nuances that need to be translated, and so translation software has difficulty. So they're not translated into that many other languages at the present point in time, and people who do want them translated off to have to translate themselves. Of course, translation services cost money as well. So we're first working on the system overview, and we'll be translating that next into Spanish. We would like to have other languages available, but that obviously takes time and finances.
So anyone else, any questions, suggestions? I love the richness of the sharing. But if not, then we can close.
Oh, hi, I have a question.
Yes.
Hey guys, I love the video and I love it. And I love everyone's comments as well. I'll turn on my video. I love everyone's comments as well. And was just, I want to help. And I know we all are working. I was wondering, like, what can the average person do to help? Or, you know, I'm sure you've explained this, sharing knowledge, yeah, and finance. What else can I help with?
Yeah, so it depends upon like where you want to help. There's helping our common direction, and then there's helping the project itself, which is working on this common direction of ours. So working on the project right now, the project is mostly in the information stage. We're engineering the systems design. Elizabeth has been working on for a while, engineering the material environment, because these living environments and community are different than the current living environments we have. And so it requires a slight change to the material environment. So in terms of helping, Tara, there's working on the information system wherever you have an interest, because the information system really encompasses everything. So wherever you have an interest, you could begin working on that documentation. And that's essentially produces documentation in the form of text, in the form of visuals, and then later in the form of simulation. So deliverables for that are like the information system. There's also a website, there's software development, and then there's working in your local environment on our common direction. And that could be helping bring awareness to the idea. That could be helping educate other people. One of the first things that it requires is coming to an understanding of because if all of those are more, it's sometimes difficult to communicate these ideas with people, and sometimes people aren't interested in having these ideas communicated. Oh, go ahead.
After I heard, after Sherry's comment, and you explained it really well too. We have to and I'll restart. That can be on my list to do, my checklist, where I will start reading the information system and then seeing where I can play a part in that. But and where you explained it, because she was like, how do we explain it with goods and, needs? and you were like, it goes back down to the core values, which obviously everyone into maintaining our highest possible source of happiness and sustainability living. And you're right, because then I was wondering when Sherry was saying, well, okay, well, what if somebody wants like wants something but nobody else wants that, or all of these questions come into play, but then it comes down to that core value there. I'm assuming there wouldn't be these, as we say, wants. Their needs, like you wouldn't want it because you're already fulfilled. You've got these other like needs that create fulfillment, so you don't have these wants or something. I feel like I'm explaining it right, but I feel like I understand. Maybe.
Yeah, this is where so there's working on our direction. There are 3 ways to work on our direction, because there are really 3 ways to do work in community. There's working on the information system, there's working in the material environment, and then there's working on transition. And so it depends upon like where you would like to participate and contribute to the transition and living in a community type society. Again, Elizabeth and I are planning on buying land and constructing one of these. So then there's actually working in and living in a habitat that's producing an abundance of food, fuel, and fiber. So we are working on buying land and constructing one of these, and we don't quite know where it is, but that's an opportunity for people to also contribute. But that is also a transition. It's not, when you're living in the first habitat service system, or maybe the first couple, you're not technically living in, you're applying some of the practices and operations of a community type society, but you're not technically living in a community type society unless you're getting like most of your resources. And you wouldn't be able to, because we have computing systems and other systems that require resources from the market state. So it would still be a transition. And then there's the people working on and you can work on transition in 3 ways. You can work on transition at the political, You can work on transition at the political level, you can work on transition at the market level, and you can work on transition at the population scale. So just working on in your environment, you could work on transitioning markets. I think that might be difficult there, or like corporations, helping them align more greatly. You can work on transitioning eco-villages. That's kind of like, it's more of most eco-villages are run as corporations. So that'd be a mixture of facilitating the transition of the mass population, those people living in that population, along with state, because that would require different state contracts and agreements. So yes, Elizabeth?
Oh, yeah, I would complement that. First of all, thank you, Tara, for being here. That's really nice to have you here. And trying to complement like that answer is, I think everyone can help like to sharing the Auravana content somehow with like friends, and like talk about that. No, okay.
Is it too close? I don't know.
No, that's okay.
Okay. Yeah,
yeah, I think just sharing, and like talk with other people and like communicate, like we have this proposal. I think, everyone can help a bit, like trying to make this information like clear, and yeah.
And not get discouraged when when you're asked questions that you can't answer, because the best thing to say is, I don't know, I think it's in the documentation, and it probably is in the documentation. And then you leave it up to them to follow through, because, who knows if they will follow, who knows if they're really interested, who knows what the context that you're presently in when you're communicating about these ideas, which relate to all aspects of our life. Because it's a societal level, it's a transformation of society. So it really relates to every aspect of our life, which is why, if you want to work on the documentation, I'm sure there's like interesting stuff that that the documentation doesn't have, that could be made open source and entered into the documentation, the information system standard, to make it more complete.
I'd like to add something here, if I could, please. It's asking, if somebody has the time, asking somebody to go into these things is lovely and a great idea. But I would like to, as Elizabeth said, find people that you can send out the Auravana.org information to, connect with people on it. But I think that Maria's idea of children's story should be explored into a series of books that can be easily illustrated. And since you have, this would be a great introduction for passing around to people to stimulate the mind, not only of the kids, but of the adults in a series of books.
We've lost you. You have to talk more into the microphone. We cannot hear you.
Does anybody unmute me?
We cannot hear you. You'll have to talk more into the. I can respond to what you said while you get your microphone sorted out.
My microphone is high, so I don't understand.
It seems like are you on your,
Kavita, it's not clear. Can
you hear me?
it's really difficult.
I don't know what's blocking me.
I think maybe try talking into different parts on your desk, because it sounds like the microphone is distant where you are speaking from. So yes, that increased for a moment and then went back down. So like if you're.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that is better.
Okay. As I was saying, the idea of getting Auravana.org out to other people and passing it around. But the best idea, I think, was children's books and a series of them, which would go to the children. And when the parents read them, they start the thing. This would also help you when people do not understand and you're going around to all these diagrams, which somebody first comes to is mind-blowing. And it would break it down if you had a series of books, one on the material, one on the overview. Wouldn't it be nice to live in this kind of a community and explain how it looks? And then in each series, you break it down and show the kids what they could be doing in terms of growing or in terms of the material or the lifestyle. And this, I think, as far as I can see, this is huge and could be a great key for you. And not only will you have some income from the books, but you will be explaining it to the lay people and to the kids and to others who want to see it, instead of all this, the diagrams and the verbiage, which are too complicated for most people to understand. And Maria's idea of the books is, as far as I'm concerned, brilliant and a #1 key, which you should be following, aside from maybe a university course. But thank you.
Thank you. That's a wonderful suggestion. Elizabeth and I had actually talked about creating a comic book for the introduction. Again, I mean, if people are interested in how many people are currently contributing to this project, exactly, many people contributing to our direction. But at the moment, it's Elizabeth and myself. Sometimes we hire people, and then we have 2 advisors. So this has been an idea that we actually have a note section on creating like a children's color book. And the note section is currently under development. At first, this book introduces the child to what a concept is. A lot of people in school, in their education, are never introduced to what a concept is, never introduced to concept models and axioms. So it is a book that we've thought about would have a story that would first introduce the reader to what a concept is and how concepts impact the way people think and how concepts impact the material environment around them. And then therefrom, we don't really have the story yet. But this is a very important idea. It's just that there's a limited amount of time, and we've both been more interested in engineering the system itself. So if somebody would like to work on this or help us work on this idea, that would be great, because I agree with everybody here that a storybook, especially for children that parents can read, is essential.
Can I say something? I just want to add, more than children's book, which yes, absolutely, it's more the storytelling to all of us. Like if speaking to like when they say, you know, for the little children in us, you know, so that we can understand. So the storytelling of presenting this, it can even have, and I think it will be very forward thinking also, because this whole project is forward thinking, to even, you know, we might even have a lot of resistance for change, you know, everybody receiving this. So it may be taking us in a journey of visualization, you know, like the visualizing, like you landed in orbit right now, and this is how you're going to be greeted, and kind of take us there where this already happened, you know, in a visual, emotional, connecting to the emotional part. Because right now I understand the value and the importance of the whole logistics and the whole blueprint of the whole systems and everything. That's very important. But the other part, the most feminine part, is very important. The inspirational, the spiritual, the connection. How, if I grow up in this type of society, what am I going to aspire to be when I grow up? What, because right now I have an idea, you know, people have ideas. Well, there will be new jobs available that we don't even know will be available because of new things that will be created. You know what I mean? So kind of already take us there, how it is right now. That's happening already. It already happened, and we are already living in this way. So appeal to that. What is the essence of this project? What is the matter, the heart? What is the heart of this project? What is the inspiration that brought you and brought Elizabeth to dedicate so much, you know, and put all these, what is the artistic part, you know, because people move when they connect. Let's connect this brilliant idea into what will touch people's heart to move and dedicate hours of the time that they don't have to put into helping, you know. So what is this? This will preserve for your future generation, for your grandkids. And this is, you know, something like in that way. And that's what I feel, connecting us to the feeling, to what is possible, to you can do it, we can do it. And why we do it is Mother Nature is calling us, because, you know, what is the center of this? It can't be economy. We have to stop thinking about it. Has to be economy. It has to be you know, other sets of values. It has to be Mother Earth, really, because without her, we can't exist. She will survive. We all know that. Why bridging? You guys are bridging Condor and Eagle, because Elizabeth comes from South America. This is part of a vision of our grandfathers. And you are the eagle, is the benefit. You know that, right? You know the eagle and the condor prophecy? The prophecy is the eagle, the condor coming from the South America, representing the love of Mother Earth and nature and people, and eagle representing North America, which is the advancing technology, flying together, wing to wing. The North, the eagle technology, to help and serve humanity and the earth. So you are that. You are the eagle and the condor flying together. Very powerful. You are the result of a lot of prayers being done in many sacred fires around this whole continent for this type of project to be birthed. You are the result of those prayers. There's a lot backing you up spiritually. It's very important, very important. I just want to really encourage you, because you've gone so far. And I feel, as a mother, I am a mother of a 30-year-old son, and I already feel I'm a grandmother. This is the human part, the artistic, the heart, the spirit, the alma. Thank you so much.
I want to add something here, because what you've done, Travis and Elizabeth, and what you're doing is very necessary and important, because like Maria and also what Tavita, I'm just responding to what everyone has been sharing. It's you have created it to co-create. You have kept it open source. Everything that you've thought, instead of making it something that people have to pay to access, it's everything is out there. And whatever we all can do and everyone can do is what each person takes on from what you've created. And each person does what is their consciousness. And that is really what is needed. And I feel the purity and clarity of your thought can just stay exactly as it is. And who can write stories and who can tell them and who can share them and feel them. And even like how Maria's talking about the backstory, because this is what we all have been doing for so long. We are seeing it manifesting. We are seeing that what you're doing is a manifestation of that. So I think, I really think everyone's doing exactly, if you wanted a feedback, that's my feedback. What you've done is really amazing. Very, very wonderful. And I see the support you have. And I think it's because of everyone around you realize what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Yeah.
Yeah, we do have a lot of support, and we appreciate that.
Yeah.
If anyone has anything more to share, then please do. I'm loving everything that everyone's saying. Sherry, you said something. Yeah, exactly.
Just very briefly, it looks to me like we as humanity and as Gaia, that we have everything we need, and you guys are bringing the information, the blueprint, but we already have everything we need. We have the intelligence, we have the heart and the soul, we have the imagination, we have the energy. This planet is an enormous gift to humanity and to all the different life forms that live upon it. We don't have to wait 30 or 50 years for someone to figure out cold fusion, right? Any comments on that, Travis or Elizabeth?
So I don't know much about energy or power, new technologies in power development, no new technological developments in relation to power. It is true that in order to construct this new way of living, we will need power, unless it's just people living in the low density bioconstruction environments where there is very little power required. In order to transform our current material environment into a new way of living, we need power, we need electricity and resources. We have a lot of what we need, and we've had a lot of what we need in terms of information and resources on the planet for a long period of time on the planet right now. And so Auravana is kind of like an integration, unification of information, some of which was already there, some of which was just obvious, and it just took some time for somebody to do a little bit of analysis and synthesize the obvious knowledge. But we also have at the present point on the planet a lot of what we don't need. And this is a challenge and a problem to be overcome with solutions like we've seen some solutions presented here. So yeah, we have a lot of what we need, and we've had a lot of that for a while. We have new information and new technologies that are facilitating progress toward this direction. Certainly, if we have a power production method that is, can produce a real abundance of power without all of the negative consequences that current power production methods have, that then it would make transition easier, because in some ways today's, I'll just use the word economy, today's economy is based to a large extent on power, because we use machines that do most of a lot of the work for us. So yeah, power. And on the planet, we have a lot of structures that are inhibiting our movement toward this direction and our realization of this direction. So we need to think more carefully about those structures and how those structures can be transitioned. But I'm hopeful, and I think we have the intelligence to eventually reach this way of living. And I think we will on the planet reach this way of living, but some places on the planet, they might reach it more quickly than others.
Yeah, just to share my point of view. In the past, I had like this view, we will create like this big city for for everybody, but I have like the same question in terms of like power and resources. Is the way we produce today, in society is like unsustainable, totally. And this is one point. And now we are working on the proposal of the low tech and low density, because we understand people can live sustainable and regeneratively without spend like, a lot of like resource or like mineration in terms of, to produce like technology in general. So this is a point, and we are working on like to calculate in like a small house, because with like these data and these numbers, we can like calculate a big scale. So yeah, we are working on in terms of like the power calculation for a family, and after that for like a small community. But we don't know exactly yet how will be.
Yeah, transition requires a different material environment. And right now, there's not the open source information in terms of resources and the open source information in terms of construction of almost anything. There's intellectual property in relation to these things. There's information that you can't include. The internet used to be more accessible so many years ago, and now it's more difficult to find some of this documentation. So what I'm referring to is, in community, all resources are accounted for, both in terms of location, quality, quantity. So the information system has access to all of this so that it can optimize production. Right now, not only do we not have resource surveys at a sufficient level that are openly accessible to everyone, but we also don't have the engineering drawings and technical specifications that are openly available to everyone. So this is something we're working on at this local habitat system. We're identifying, I don't know if we're supposed to let that person in. We'll see. Monique, shall we just let another person in? No, that's the person we know.
No, don't, please.
Oh, sorry.
So yeah, maybe we boot him out to the waiting room, in terms of a material environment, you have objects, because you're dealing with materiality. So you have objects, and then you have processes done to these objects, and then you have humans that are working with objects and processes. So it's pretty simple in some ways to understand, but you have to identify all of those objects, which themselves are resources and are composed of resources. Yeah, he just changed his name. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but we're very hopeful, and there's a lot of great things happening on the planet right now. Okay, I think we're good there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else people would like to share? Sherry, I think, wants to share.
I just want to say thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. I got to get down to Brazil and see you guys.
Yes.
Yeah,
We'd appreciate that too.
Totally.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Travis and Elizabeth. It's been really wonderful, even more than I had expected. I was really looking forward to it, very excited. And I think we can have another session, and maybe we can have it in another way also. I think that would be wonderful. Thank you everyone for co-creating this session. I loved how everyone was. It showed, actually. There was just so much. I mean, you can see we've gone on almost 1 hour extra because people had so much to share and say. And many people have asked for the recording, and of course they will receive it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. In my Indian way, I don't end the meeting. I will stay here. So if you all, whenever anyone wants to leave, they can leave. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Anyone else? Or does anyone else have any questions? I guess, or if not, I guess we can wrap this up. Thank you everyone for participating and being here. Thank you, Monique Shaw, for hosting this. And this is the first time we've shown publicly this VR experience. So Yeah, it's different. We've done different things with it. We've shown it before, not publicly. The first time we've done it online. Excuse me. We have actually shown it publicly twice. One at the Crow Village. So we showed it to the indigenous there, and they kind of found it exciting. And they got to see the view.
It couldn't, it's got
VR,
frozen.
and so that was kind of cool. And then we also had a presentation at the release of the system overview and present. So one time, our internet connection is a bit unstable. We're back. So one time we essentially just had people ask questions, and then we kind of like ran around the environment and answered those questions. This time was a bit different because Elizabeth put on the headset. Normally it's me who's putting on the headset. So yeah, it was kind of a new novel, but also great experience. So if nothing else, I think we might say goodbye, but if there's anybody else who wants to speak, we'll stick around.